Godzilla.
Oh.
I got dumb face on there.
Look, Godzilla's... I mean, King Kong's going to do the best he can, but...
Hey, I'm Kong. Kong all the way.
It's a radioactive dinosaur.
I know. I'm on the losing team. I
It's
like the underdog.
This is like LNF versus a 1/8 Sonic.
I like the underdog, okay? It's like 4-cylinder versus V8.
Like LNF versus a 1/8 Sonic. I like
Yeah, hopefully nobody's hearing our Kong versus Godzilla talk.
Oh, they're hearing it.
Hello,
And there's 8 people watching.
Give us a couple seconds for everyone to file in. And, yeah, we'll get started here. Can you guys see that?
Turn the, like the speaker output on the computer somehow is coming through my headphones.
Yeah, I can hear us about 15 seconds behind.
But I had audio, so that's good. Up from last week.
Put that on there. It'll keep the conversation going.
Just run it in a loop.
Oh, man. We're such a train wreck without Eric.
I know.
Yeah, this full... See, I look fat again in this chair.
There we
Whatever.
go. That's going to have to do. Can you still hear it in the headphones?
Yeah, just very quietly.
We might have to just...
Only in one
Can you just turn it down on here? Whatever... How is it even getting to the headphones?
How is audio, you guys? Can everybody hear us out there?
Yeah, everyone hear us okay? What's up?
It's only my right headphone.
Yeah. Up my left, so I probably have mine on backwards.
Yes, you
The
do.
one with the cord? Yeah, weird. It's like slightly delayed too. Well, we can do no headphones.
What the heck? Where's the headphone output even at?
Audio is great. I hear you, Alfred says.
It's probably one of these, but that also adjusts.
Are you gonna get them, Al?
Oh, what?
You're good.
You're good.
Come on.
Yeah, we're just doing no headphones. That's
No
cool with you
headphones,
guys.
all right.
Yeah, that's too
Everything
annoying.
else is working, so.
Yeah, it is a train wreck without Eric here.
Yep. Eric's out of the office today, so
Oh, crap.
he's actually manning this from his home.
Oh, is he like remote desktop in?
Yeah, he started it.
Nice.
I was like, I don't know when this starts.
How is this going to work? We need you.
Yeah, we'll have to have Ryan come up and give you an update on his couch. I am sure he's listening, and I'm sure he will be happy to come
He
up here
would
and yell
love
at you guys.
Yeah.
to give you an update.
We actually have a new update.
Well, he doesn't have a couch yet. Let's not get too
The
excited.
HV3, I don't know. What do you know if Tim's working on that? Our other Tim?
I know it's on the list. I don't know if it's
the
currently
HV4.
active.
Yeah, the HV4 is going to be
HV4.
awesome, but
Do you know that
we just
it
have so many
wasn't
projects.
supposed to be 3?
No?
HVII meant intake insert.
Oh.
Not Roman numerals for 2.
That is
Oh, and they just went.
And they went with an HV3 after that.
that is
I
funny.
never knew that.
I didn't know that too, and I just let that happen.
Someone just thought
That's
of it too.
probably mostly my fault.
When will the Equalizer 3800 be available? I don't know.
We're working on our fab guy is actually kind of bouncing between R&D and fab. He actually had to switch over to fab and build a bunch of ATSV catbacks that will be releasing today, I believe. They'll be on the website available.
Oh,
we're gonna
really?
have 10
Sweet.
ATSV non-valved versions available. They'll be shipping within 2 weeks. I'm trying to over-deliver on that. And then about a month out, we'll have the valved version.
Do you know how many of those are sold yet? Have you heard
I don't
anything?
even think we've activated the page. I
Oh.
built the
Yeah,
product
we
page,
didn't-
but
we
I
didn't
haven't
pre-sale
This
activated
is
on
the
those.
first time that's been told, like right here, right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so basically we got Al here. I'm Trevor, obviously. We got Tim and Matt here. And we're talking about fuel systems today.
Oh, the Facebook one up is last week's.
Is it? Let me go change that quick.
Or Eric can.
He's not remote. He just is on the back end. So
Okay, hold on. We're still trying
I
to.
suppose we have lots of.
this is bothering me too.
Does that mean that the Facebook people aren't seeing us?
Oh yeah, that's Ryan.
Trevor just opened the wrong one. There it is.
Oh, we're good. All right. All right. Yeah. So we're talking about fuel systems today.
Hey, that's
I know,
better.
There we go.
There we go.
All of us.
There we go.
Our motto here at ZZP is "Go fast, not broke." That means don't replace parts that are unnecessary to replace. I answered this email so many times. I'm sure Matt and Al
My
do
whole
as
time
well.
building my car, I've been broke.
Like-
So I'm forced to find ways to go fast without
We've all
spending a
been
lot
there.
of money.
Most of us are still there.
What fuel pump do I put in my car? First question: do you need it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how you need it, and if you don't know, then that's cool. We can tell you. A fuel pressure gauge is like $20, maybe $30 at like
Yeah.
a Harbor Freight type auto or parts store.
If that's too much, you can rent them from most chain stores for full refund
Yeah,
and hook them on the Schrader valve and zip tie it to your windshield wiper. I've done that several times.
yep.
How long did you leave that on there?
just for the test.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you
most fuel rails have a Schrader valve on it, which is a valve that you just thread the sensor into. When you thread the sensor into it, pushes a little plunger, and then it allows fuel pressure to hit the actual gauge. And then you can just stick that underneath the wiper and just look right out your windshield, see that and the road. And if you're holding your full fuel pressure that your car desires, then you don't need a fuel pump.
Yep.
Fuel pumps are not a fun thing to install. It takes a lot of time. Some cars you have to drop the tank. You might not be lucky like the 3800 guys to have a trap door. I mean,
Tim's car has a trap door now. After the last time he had to drop it.
yep. So, I mean, a fuel pump, man. If an in-tank fuel pump, don't replace it unless you need it.
I mean, a lot of modern cars, they're so efficient now that most modern cars don't really need them ever.
Yeah.
I mean, what's like an L&F high pressure
Matt?
fuel pump good too?
L&F will do 500 on E85.
Yeah,
on
so
a
that's
stock intake.
90% of people.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. So, I mean, Matt says the L&F can handle 500. I mean, no way. Drop the tank, and then once you put an aftermarket fuel pump in the car, you have to worry about scavenging. You want to be able to turn a corner and your fuel pump still suck fuel and
with
not
the
suck air.
Delta platform has a big problem with that when you get to a non-stock pump.
Yep. Kappa too. Kappa has a problem with it stock.
Oh,
because
really?
My car's stock and I can't race with under
Yeah.
3/8 of a tank of fuel.
I think
Yeah,
they
we were
have
just-
a smaller pump than the Cobalt too, though.
Okay.
Oh, did they get a...
At least the early ones did. They might have upped them after that, but the early
Yeah,
ones
let us know if
definitely
anyone's too loud, too quiet. We'll adjust it
'cause the
as we go.
headphones weren't
So,
working.
but I wanted to ask with two of kind of the 3800 OGs on here. You guys had to figure out what you ran into first with the old 3800s. So how did you
I mean, yeah, that
battle the
was
fuel
really
system
kind of
there?
the first time going from the ground up.
Yeah. Fortunately for us, we loved gauges. So, like, Zoom's car had, like, a fuel pressure gauge in it the whole time I worked at ZZP, pretty much. So that was, like, one of his first gauges. Those Inteltronics ones, right? the red numbers,
Yeah, I remember
really
what you're
boring
talking
looking
about.
screens.
Did it have the button with the changing colors on it?
Oh, no.
No.
This is like...
It was before they had multicolor LEDs.
Yeah. But yeah, a 3800 car, you're under vacuum, you should be in the mid 40s. That's fine. And then if you're NA, it'll probably go up to about 50 psi of fuel pressure at full throttle. And NA guys never have to change a pump unless it fails.
Yeah.
And a boosted car like a GTP, you have some boost, so it's going to go a little higher than 50. So you're talking like mid-high 50s for fuel pressure. If you have that much in a 3800 car, you're fine. Don't touch the fuel pump. Mm-hmm. My Bonneville had some bolt-ons. It made 315 at the wheels, and I ran E47. E47 is half and half E85 in gas, and that requires 15% more fuel, and the stock pump was fine.
So these you mentioned the NA really never has to upgrade them.
No.
And a lot of these other ones are getting old. Would you say yours just gets old and dies? Would you just replace it with an OEM, or would you upgrade it as a while you're in there ever?
That's a good question, actually. Me personally, I am a huge fan of OEM. If it's
Especially
enough,
on
then
the
run
newer
an OEM.
stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't necessarily go with like a parts store brand.
Yeah, just
So
the
maybe
cheapest O'Reilly's.
price out the actual OEM versus like my go-to for an aftermarket pump is the green top AEM 320. They've worked well for me and all the cars that I've put them in, and never had an issue with them.
Yep. Another thing with in-tank pumps, don't just put the sock that comes with the aftermarket pump on the
Yeah.
pump and just drop it in your canister and think you're good to go.
Unless you're just gonna always have a full tank.
Because that pump, that canister and pump is so complicated. Like it uses fuel pressure to fill the canister.
Yeah.
But in some of the really old cars, they have like a Venturi mechanical pump in them. Some cars like the ATS-V has like a drop pump. What do you call that? Like you have a second pump on the other side. And
Lift pump.
Lift pump, yeah. And, that's pretty complicated setup. So you don't want to
Yeah.
touch it unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cobalt guys still constantly battle having issues when you change the pump with getting fuel supply under like a third to a quarter of a tank. The Venturi style system in the bottom of the Cobalt canister is very, very picky. You have to have that pump seated exactly where the stock one was, or else it's not going to function.
That's a different problem than the weird hump thing. Because that's why they starve on side to side, right? Is because the tank is so wide.
Yeah, well, it's a combination. So on the bottom of the Cobalt pump, there's a tiny little valve underneath where the pump is at, so that most of the fuel you're getting comes from inside the canister. But that suction there lifts the valve and it draws a little bit from outside the canister as well. And so your return line goes back to the canister, so it should always keep the canister full even when your fuel level is low. Yep. And then with fuel sloshes to the side away, that valve drops and closes the canister. So you can run off of just what's in the canister for however long it takes to get the fuel back underneath it. Sonics use an actual Venturi line, which works really well. We just pulled the tank out of the LTZ a couple days ago to check some things, and it hasn't had the key turned on in a month. And there was like a half inch of fuel in the tank, and the canister was still full to the brim.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool to see that one's working. And that car has a ZZ350 in it, running off of that Venturi line.
Yeah, the LNF doesn't fill the canister any faster than what stock pump will support. So if you put a bigger pump in the LNF, you have to run 3/4 of a tank or more.
Yeah.
Or floor it for 4 seconds and you're done.
Yeah.
It just runs out.
Yeah, I ran a surge tank on my car to get around that issue.
Yeah. Noah's got a pretty cool setup too, right? He was roughly told me
Yeah,
about.
Noah has a fill pump in his, or like a lift pump, which is another common thing that a handful of Delta guys have done. I think Taylor Lear was one of the first ones I heard of doing it. But just a smaller pump that you connect with line to a bulkhead to the bottom of the canister, and then leave enough line on it so that it roughly reaches to the back of the tank.
That's what's in the our black LNF Cobalt.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It's a stock Grand Prix pump. Just sits in the very back of the tank. That's the bad part of the design of the Cobalt, is putting the
Yeah, the canister's in the front.
towards the front of the
I don't know why.
tank.
But yeah, and when you do a setup like that, it doesn't take very much pump because there's no pressure.
They weren't expecting these cars to run 11s and 10s.
Yeah.
Well, that's true
They
also.
should've.
They can cruise down the highway on fumes perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of how you choose an aftermarket pump is the inlet design too. Our ZZP 350 has a different style inlet than the AEM E85 pump. So you kind of have to remove your fuel pump, look at the inlet of it, see if you have the tiny little offset inlet or if you have the big thumb-sized center inlet, and then order that pump according.
Yeah.
And you want, like, if you pull your factory pump out of a hole, you want to put the fuel pump, like, back in that hole.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I like the AEM pump so well, is with the Cobalt tanks. It's the only one that I was able to get to fit very, very well into the stock canister. So I
must be on Ryan Derrick's old mic.
That's why it was turned down.
Well, I'm trying to make sure Eric didn't switch
Can't
around
use
the
that
numbers either, so
Ryan probably blew the speaker in the mic.
I'm pretty sure we're 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's a chance I might be adjusting the wrong ones.
Alfred, report back. Let us know how the volume is now.
Yep.
I've got this mic just about in my mouth.
I see the people on Facebook are already getting into the injector debate.
Oh, yeah.
Did not take long.
Okay. That's another one. My opinion with fuel injectors. If you don't need them, don't buy them.
Yeah, there's no benefit. And
Yeah.
potentially there's downsides.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that till I started here, that you could go too big and kind of hurt yourself
Yeah.
if you're way over injected. I think
Yeah,
you
you can
told me
have
about that,
problems
Al.
with drivability and idle, how smooth the idle is.
The only time that you will gain power from larger fuel injectors is if you're maxing yours. If you're maxing your fuel injector, the injector is so wide open that the fuel is not entering the engine at the correct time. So you have bad injection timing, I guess you would say, and kind of dirty power. So that's when it would be nice to have a larger injector because you have a better spray timing and the fuel gets in the cylinder correct.
Where is that at? I was trying to get into the...
Yeah, you can actually talk into the flat part, kind of like this. Will technically sound better than in the top of
Oh,
it.
yeah, I didn't realize till last week that the mics actually say front on one side.
I was about 5 degrees off. Ryan, how is that?
Yeah,
check,
that sound better?
I mean, the sticker was pointed that way.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, fuel injectors also. Don't replace them if you don't need them, and only get as large of an injector as you realistically think you're going to need. If you have a Sonic and you're never going to run E85, there is no point to ever running a 60-pound or larger injector.
Right.
A 42 is fine. If you're a 3800 car, you have 2 more injectors, so 42s will get you to 400 wheel.
Yeah.
So, on gas, so 42s are fine for any supercharged build, unless you're E85, and you need 30% more. And really, much better from a couple degrees. That's cool.
Anyway, so we covered pumps, we covered injectors.
Nice, Jeff.
Matt saves it for the good info.
Yeah.
What else do we have? Just lines? Maybe fuel rails? Kind of the minor parts of the system?
I get annoyed with people thinking they need larger fuel rails. If you look at an LS setup, it's pretty much just fuel line. Same with 3800. It's like a fuel line that daisy chains the injectors. It's the LSJ. The fuel rail is significantly larger than your feed line. It cannot be a choke point, but people will think that they need to go larger because there's more fuel volume. But then you get into the whole non-compressible fluid argument and just goes over most people's heads.
Have them measure the inside of their fuel rail and then look at the holes in the end of the injector.
Yeah, the hole in the end of the
Yeah.
injector.
Man, the injector's a pretty small hole, so.
The feed line can start to fight you. To an extent, you can overcome it with more pressure. The Cobalt, when it made 900, was running through a stock feed line.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of pump behind it to make it happen.
We'll have a new AN Cobalt fuel line kit real soon. Mostly because they break, though, from rust. Not because you really need one.
Yeah, so, just in case anybody didn't, miss that, we used a factory fuel line on a Cobalt and made damn near 900 wheel horsepower with no issues.
898 back to back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the factory fuel line is fine.
The stock feed line is roughly the same as a Dash 6.
Yeah.
So,
If you don't have a rusty car, never worry
yeah,
about it ever.
As these cars get older, we're starting to see the rusted fuel lines a lot more. and it's expensive to get a replacement stock fuel line, and they're a complete pain in the butt to get into the car because it's all one pre-bent piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Matt
fuel
looks
rails, fuel lines, all fine.
Yeah,
You don't need to replace them unless you want fancy looking stuff. But I'm not really a big fan of fancy looking stuff because as soon as you mess with it, it's one more thing that can fail.
Yeah.
You put fancy AN lines on, now you have fuel lines popping off under your hood, spraying fuel on your hot
you have
engine.
fittings to leak. They're a pain in the butt to assemble.
Yeah, they're a pain in the butt to assemble and make look nice. Like the idea of AN lines is great, but what happens when you do a crappy job at assembling them and
and then you're stuck.
looks terrible?
Yeah, and then I was always cheap, so I would buy like the cheap stainless mesh outer braided line, which are even more of a nightmare to get the fittings on the end of them. You waste so much time getting those things together. You should have just bought a pre-made line, had someone else do it that has the right tools.
And if you ever have something go wrong, like those fittings you have to order and wait a week to get in. So something goes wrong, you can't run to the store and fix it. Like,
But
your
yeah,
car's stopped until you order a new whatever.
or if you accidentally ordered one of the fittings wrong,
Yep.
you're dead in the water until you're able to replace it.
Yep. And then next, so a DI car like an LNF, LTG, LHU, LDKs, those cars are direct injected. So that fuel injector is there's not a lot of options for them for larger ones. And those cars actually have two fuel pumps. They have an in-tank pump, just like all the other port-injected cars have. But then they also have a mechanical pump, which is driven off the cam. The cam basically has another lobe on it that just pushes a plunger. And then that plunger, kind of like a diesel, that plunger just takes your, let's say, 60 PSI fuel pressure and cranks it up to, 2,200 in an LNF and, 28 to 3,200 in an LTG car. And that's what you need to fight the compression in the engine because that fuel injector is spraying into your combustion. That's why you have to have that pressure because it's all about pressure difference and you have to have more pressure there.
Spraying against that cylinder pressure. That's why they run at thousands of PSI.
Yes. Yeah, and I believe diesel guys run even more than that. By far.
30,000 maybe?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 30,000 PSI for a semi-truck.
A fuel line leak on the high pressure side on a diesel can go right through your hand. You don't mess around with that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and there are a couple ways to get more fuel system out of a DI car. Number one, every car that's DI, you can scan the low pressure side. So if your low pressure is holding, then your in-tank pump is fine. Leave it alone.
Except LNF.
LNFs don't have that? Yeah, Matt's the LNF guy.
Sensor.
No sensor on the low pressure side. LTGs do. So you can scan that. It takes pretty much full mods, like a full bolt-on car to even need an in-tank pump. We're talking like 400 plus wheel horsepower on E85 to need an in-tank pump on an LTG car. But then you have to, your high pressure pump runs out quick. And we don't really like changing that. We haven't really found a affordable, reliable high pressure pump for the LTG yet. So we just made a larger fuel pump lobe. That lobe just makes the mechanical pump move more fuel. It, the plunger is deeper and higher lift. And it makes more fuel.
So what's the mythical fifth injector? I don't really know much about the system, but
That's an interesting one because a lot of people thought they were going to take the ZZP version and make it better by moving it to where they're spraying right on the top directly against the airflow into the throttle body. And before I had experience with it, I even thought the same thing. Like, why would you want to spray in from the side when you can probably get a lot more even distribution by going dead in the center? But you put the car on the dyno, and it doesn't work that way.
Right. Ours goes right across the throttle plate, so it can't mix any better than that.
Yeah.
When you put it out in the middle of the intake, you're feeding cylinders 2 and 3
Yeah.
more than 1 in 4.
But yeah, you said you've had cars on the dyno that had that setup, and you switch it
cured
right there
KR
on the
by
dyno.
moving the injector.
Yeah, by
Really?
putting it back into the evap port. So the way it works is that the evap port where we put the 5th injector in is a little pinhole that feeds right into the side of the throttle body. And so the airflow rushing through kind of just draws the fuel into the airstream. And it's like the two plastic straws trick, which a lot of people have never heard of.
It's so simple. People try to say that you're spraying down in there and it's going to come out a separate hole and it's not going to atomize. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to come out in drops. It doesn't happen like that. That air is moving over 100 miles per hour when your 5th injector turns on. Take a blowgun and drip some fuel through it and see how many drops end up on the wall.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. and for
Works very well.
And for those of you that don't know what that is, we just take a port injector, a port injected
I think
fuel
the normal
injector.
kit comes with a 60.
60.
We tee into the feed line before the mechanical pump.
Right, so
and
it
we
feeds
just
off
put
the low pressure side.
we just put like 60 pounds of fuel pressure to it, and then there's a little controller box that reads airflow, and then that changes the pulse of the injector.
And for the people that don't know, what kind of power is that recommended at?
Well, now that we have the big pump and the cams, I mean, you can go to 500 on the 85 now without the 5th injector.
Yeah, I've watched Ryan's car do it.
But if you're on a stock mechanical pump, you might make 425 maybe, and then you need the 5th injector.
Yeah.
So you'd go pump before that,
Yeah,
pretty
I mean,
much
it's-
always,
it's
yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is easier to do. It's easier to tune. There's a lot of times when you're tuning those, especially remote tuning, you have to count on the customer to set the dials where they need to be. Not telling you they turned it all the way down and the car's running rich. Because
Well,
that's actually...
Yeah, they
full
think
of
they turned
fuel.
it off when they turned it all the way up.
What's next on your list?
So there's a couple ways to get more fuel out of the high pressure side. You have the larger fuel pump lobe on the cam, and then you have the larger pump itself.
Right.
Which for the LNF we have both. We have the larger lobe and the larger pump, then on the LTG we just have the larger lobe, which seems to be enough.
Do you want to briefly explain what a larger fuel pump lobe does to those that don't know?
It's
The original ones
it's like a
are
stroker.
actually smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, you remove material from it.
Yeah.
But what it is the high pressure fuel pump is just a piston pumping in and out so that it can get that high pressure. And in factory form, there's a lot of travel left that pump is capable of that the stock fuel lobe on the cam isn't taking advantage of. So by making the flats kind of dish in on the fuel pump lobe, you can extend the pump farther and you get more stroke out of it. So you get it can keep the pressure high at a higher fuel volume. And now that we make all of the stuff ourselves, we can go even bigger than that with our cam lobes.
Yeah.
So we can extend the stroke both directions and maximize what that pump is safely capable of handling.
So it's basically a stroker kit for your factory mechanical pump.
Yeah, and then now we have places that are making big bore pumps,
Yep.
which is like the high pressure pump that we sell for the LNF is a larger bore pump. So you get the larger stroke and a larger bore. It's just like changing it in an engine. So you have a larger piston that moves farther. It's going to move a lot more fuel.
Yep. And for the ATSV, we have that Ecotec, which is basically like a big bore kit for your factory fuel pump.
Yeah, guys that are familiar with dirt bikes, it's
I was going to say, it reminds me of my moped days.
Yeah, it's even more simple than doing a jug and piston on a single cylinder 2-stroke, but it's almost exactly the same concept. You replace the liner and you replace the piston. Now you have a big bore kit in your fuel pump.
Yep. Some cars have larger DI injector options like the LNF. The LNF comes, it's not a flex fuel car, so it comes with a gas-only injector. Then they came out with the Opel version engine, the Regal engine, and they wanted to make that flex fuel. So they, obviously flex, E85 requires 30% more fuel. So they had to come out with a larger injector, so that's where the Rego injector comes in. And fortunately, we can just put those in Cobalts and HHRs and then just tune them, and you have a larger injector.
Yeah, we still sell those right on the site, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do we still have those in stock?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's like injectors and stage 1 sensors, and you're good to go pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, DI cars love larger injectors when they're available. But one thing
Yeah, if you can keep the pulse smaller on a DI car, there's a lot of power and torque to be gained.
Yeah, injection timing is crucial. It's funny, diesels love that too.
Mm-hmm.
So they run gigantic mechanical pumps so they can control their injection timing way more for way more gains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes to what you said too. You're putting an OEM brand new part on your car, so there's no negative to that at all.
Yep.
It's a new part and it's OEM. Basically, never worry about it. What would it take to flex a 3800?
A standalone.
I mean, I've heard of like they have flex kits that manipulate this and that, so you could potentially. I suppose it would be.
Or you could just do it like some other tuners we know of that just tune it on E47 and tell you it's flex.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose.
I can't believe they get away with that. People buy it.
If it's in the middle, it does both, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the one I'm talking about messes with your injector duty cycle.
Oh, really?
I believe it's a flex sensor.
Yeah, they were selling them like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like intercepts your duty
Intercepts
cycle.
the injector control, but you're not going to gain timing
Yeah.
or anything. It's only changing the fueling.
Yeah, if you're running a higher octane fuel, you've got to ignite that spark a little bit quicker because the burn takes longer. So, yeah, to have gains from E85, you really have to have additional timing.
Yeah, you'd be
and
able
fuel.
to run it, but you're not going to get any performance benefit out of it.
Yeah.
There was benefit to it when E85 was super cheap.
Like $1 or whatever.
It got
Yeah.
down to 75 cents here.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one yellow hose company
they were
had
always
$1 off.
$1 off of whatever gas was.
Wow.
We should have
Just bought it all.
tanker in there.
Yeah.
Filled up.
Empty out their whole underground tank.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't have I was trying to think of the old DSM tricks where you'd like key on, press traction control, and you could like flip between two flashes. You ever do that in yours?
I never had those.
Oh. My old Lancers, there was some weird thing where you like keyed on, press traction control twice, and a light would pop up on the dash, and you had two flashes you could do on a PCM. And then whether that light was on or not, you had one or the other flash.
There's a lot of times where that would be convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's that?
I don't know.
No power, whatever it was.
That's not someone from here. It's some NA car with a fart can.
I was going to say Tyler's Cobalt.
It might be NA car with the fart can.
He's testing out the coilovers. Made some tweaks on them, put them back together. I think that's what he was doing when I came up here.
Yeah, because we just got a revision in that he was testing out on his car. Because he had to tear the side apart anyway because he broke an axle.
And a knuckle. And a couple bolts.
Yeah. That car doesn't like to come apart because it only gets winter driven.
Yeah. Michigan ruins cars.
Yeah, if you want to see a picture of what 10-year-old BC coilovers look like.
Oh, jeez. They're rough.
Yeah, they were all one color, and you can guess what that color was. But anyways, you were 3800s.
Yeah. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for
yeah.
me. Like, you don't replace a fuel pump unless you have to. Mm-hmm. Like, fuel pressure gauges are very worth the money. Very worth the money.
Yeah,
Widebands, too.
Yeah.
Like, man, I love it when I'm remote tuning and a customer has a wideband O2.
Well, you can go so much farther and still be safe.
Yep.
Like, it's with just trusting the narrow band, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, the Sonic. Like, I was doing a couple remote tunes, and the guys are, reporting back, and the wideband was totally conflicting the narrowband on those cars. I think it's because of the back pressure in, there's so much more temperature in the manifold of those things, and in the downpipe that factory O2 signal is skewed. Gets hot. Gets
the
skewed.
hotter they get, the farther they drop.
Yeah. And that sucks because it's like, the tune looks great. And then he's like, it's like, 11 to 1. And I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah, lean her out a little bit.
Lean it out a little bit, have them report back, and it's like, oh, okay, we're going in the right direction. Let's fix it. And what's cool is, what sucks, I guess I should say, is that you make an air fuel change, the wideband shows it, but the narrowband stays at the same number. Mm-hmm. So they do another pull, and you're like, oh, it looks the same. The injector pulse width went up, I guess. Yeah. And they're like, oh, it's a half a point leaner. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, watching the narrowband, you can keep it safe, but you can't dial it into where it's going to make the best power.
No.
Which is the frustrating thing.
And widebands are so cheap now.
Yeah, people put all that money in their car and won't spend under $200 to add a wideband.
Well, it's because they look at the volt gauge, the pressure gauge, and they're like, okay, those are $80. And then they look at the wideband, and it's $250, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's outrageous.
Yeah, a lot of people, I have a lot of remote tune customers that don't have the HPT Pro, but they have widebands. So I'll just have them get a good suction cup mount and stick their phone on their window and just video the wideband screen while they're data logging a pull.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it's actually really easy to just have the two screens open and watch the AFR while I'm watching the pull and the scan, and you can get dang near just as accurate as if it was overlaid in the scan itself.
Yeah. I generally tell me per 1,000 RPM what the air fuel is, but I would be totally happy with that.
Yeah.
Because I can hear the engine in the video.
You can tell when they start the pull and when they stop, and then spread that out throughout where the graph is.
Yeah. Shane Hatfield brought up booster pumps. Didn't think about that one. I do actually love booster pumps.
I've never used them.
I don't know what it is.
I had one on my Grand Prix, and I loved it. Yeah.
I know, Tim has one on his Cadillac right now.
Yeah. It was on a boost switch. When the engine sees boost, it cranks the voltage up to whatever you want within the reason of the booster pump.
Right.
And I just turned it up just high enough to maintain fuel pressure. Mm-hmm. Do the test on a cold day, I guess, because on a cold day you're making the most power, so that's the most fuel demand. Matt
so the booster pumps are just a voltage regulator that intercepts the voltage signal going to the fuel pump, and then it adds voltage to it, so the pump actually spins faster.
Yeah. Some will go to 16, 18, 20 volts to the pump.
Yeah, a lot of them can go beyond what your pump can actually handle. So you don't just put it in and turn it up. You turn it up as much as you need, and that's it. Yeah. It would be cool if some of them, lowered the voltage. I don't think very many do.
They actually do on the base.
That's nice.
They do for the base. So your pump will last a little bit longer.
Yeah.
You can get about 30% out of a booster pump. 30% over a year.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a pretty good amount of headroom.
Yeah, that's huge.
On newer cars, the stock pumps are solid enough to where that might be enough to get you whatever you need.
Yeah, for 90% of people, that's probably...
Yeah. Well, like on Tim's car, he's running a stock Hellcat pump. And he has the OEM reliability, and it supplies what he needs, and it was an easy fit. Yeah. So I see no reason to even avoid the OEM pumps. Some of the ones that we use work really well. I'm a big fan. But yeah, I like the idea, and I try to push the idea on people of not buying things you don't need.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a couple $100 you could have bought something that you would have felt
you could have bought a wideband.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No kidding.
Daniel said, I was told I don't need a wideband. Now you guys say we do. You don't need one. It's just a convenience.
If you just want your car to be safe, you don't need one. If you want your car to make the most safe power that it can, then yes, you do need one.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on the car too. I mean, if it's a car with basic bolt-ons, narrowband is fine. If you start adding stuff like big cams, big turbos, you need a wideband.
Yeah.
And also a damn tune, not a mail order tune. If you have full bolt-ons, don't buy a mail order tune from anybody.
Yeah.
Like, not even us. Like, get a remote tune. Like,
Yeah, every single customer from us, I want to make sure you guys know this. Every single customer from every platform has the ability to rent HP tuners and a laptop from us.
Yes.
So there is not an excuse to not have a remote tune if that's what your setup would benefit from.
Yeah.
I hear that excuse a lot.
If you have a cold air intake and downpipe and an intercooler, I suppose a mail order tune is okay. Or a stage 3 Cobalt, I suppose a mail order tune is okay. But there are
when we've done thousands of the same setup, and and even the stage 3 Cobalt is still a fairly mild setup.
And the thing is even out of 1,000, there's probably 10 or more that could highly benefit from a remote tune. You like a mail order tune doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah, sometimes you'll have a random MAF sensor that reads a little off.
Yep.
Or someone might live somewhere where their fuel is a little funky.
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Funky fuels for sure. I deal with that all the time. Deal with it all the time.
I was going to ask if you guys are done with that thought. Matt specifically, do you remember when you switched to 85 in the Grand Prix and stuff? Because it was all 93 probably back then.
I've never ran E85 in the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, E85 came out very much later.
Zoom didn't either.
Yeah, Zoom never did either. None of his record. All his Zoom records were on gas.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, on the blower. On
You guys ever run race fuel even? Or just all 93?
You ran race fuel right from the start.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Mixes, mixes or straight, depending on the setup. I've made many trips for Matt to the gas station to pick up some 110 for him back in the day. Race gas is cool too. But, leaded
it works
fuel
well, but it's cheap.
Yeah.
Or not cheap.
Yeah, it's super expensive now. I don't know, 110's got to be about $7 a gallon, I would imagine.
It was
Every time
$8
gas
last
goes
year.
up, race gas goes up, and then gas goes down, and race gas doesn't go down.
Yeah.
I so
Of
agree.
course.
This seems
Yeah, it's getting scary too with the 85 kind of ramping up. Like,
Yep.
that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot cheaper than premium, though.
It's always been the wild card, though, of like crazy cheap, crazy safe.
I've always felt like for whatever reason, the E85 seems to more correlate with the diesel price fluctuations. Maybe it's the transport, or I don't have anything to base that on other than just watching the pump prices, but it seems like it works that way. Mm-hmm. But, man, E85, when it first came out, it's amazing. I mean, it was around and really picking up mainstream when I was first getting into cars, and there was many times thinking that there's no way I would piss around with this 4-cylinder stuff if it wasn't for having E85 available. It's just such a gigantic difference. Because, I mean, my car up until a couple years ago was my daily as well, so I'm not going to run race gas in that all the time, obviously. So E85 bridges that gap, and I think it was a huge thing for the mod car community in general.
We've always been lucky, kind of by Iowa cornfields. We've always kind of had it.
Yeah, the Midwest area we do pretty well.
I think we're at like 50% of the country can get it easy though. There's kind of just some patches left. I think that it's tough to get.
Not all E85 is good either. There's a lot of garbage E85 out there.
We've had E85 that just misfires for some reason.
Yep.
You don't know why, but you drain it out and put fresh fuel from down the road in, and all of a sudden all your power's back and it runs great.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, it doesn't last as long sitting.
Right.
If you let your car sit over winter or whatever. I've never had an issue, but I've heard.
Yeah, I've never left a car sit with E85 in it. I get too nervous about it.
Ethanol is, what's the word, hydroscopic, absorbs water from the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So you let it sit long term with adequate airflow, and it'll constantly absorb water out of the air and you can cause corrosion and rust issues inside of your fuel system.
Or just fill your tank with gas. Or with water, I mean. Like, if you have, let's say you have a car, and you're like, oh, I don't like emissions. I'm going to pull all my emissions off. I don't need this EVAP pump anymore. I'm just going to disconnect it. And then you run E85. Guess what's going to happen? there's water flowing through that evap line that's open to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's going to fill your tank with water
You're
eventually.
gonna get water dilution in your fuel.
Yeah. And that's terrible. So, like, I'm not a fan of deleting any of those components, really.
When E85 first came out, there was a lot of people that had issues with the black gunk, and people thought that it was from the E85. But what I was told from a high school friend of mine that his dad owns a fuel tank cleaning company was that it was actually stations repurposing old fuel tanks and using them for E85, and there was a lot of deposits in there that gas wouldn't dissolve, but the ethanol would. And so you use that tank for E85, now it has a bunch of crap in it that gets flushed out and into the car. And as the years have gone on, I see that mentioned a lot less and less and less. Like maybe the tanks have finally
cleaned
finally cleaned themselves out.
It's actually funny. I don't know if you remember this. It was a long time ago, but Ryan Derrick brought his car here, I believe maybe before he was an employee, and he was on E85 in his Cobalt for a while. And I would say a third of his intake port was full of that black gunk.
Oh, yeah.
It was like growing off the aluminum in the head. Mm-hmm. You could like take a finger out. It was like yogurt.
Ugh.
Like you could just take a gob off with your finger. It was
How'd
crazy.
It taste?
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't try that.
Did you have to do like a walnut blast, or did you just wipe off then?
The head was off for whatever reason, so we just
cleaned the whole thing,
cleaned it up, put it back in. And what's funny is it never happened again.
Weird.
That car's never been. I don't know if he's ever ran gas in it since.
Probably not.
Like he's pretty avid, like E85 user.
I think he has.
And it when we take it apart to do injector testing, you know, our fuel rail injector testing on it, like it was clean.
That's the nice thing about a fifth injector setup, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keeps it all clean in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've suggested people before to get that as one of the early fuel mods on the LNF just for that aspect, so that you do have some fuel flowing through the ports to try to keep them cleaned out.
Yep.
Now, if you're adding a fifth injector to a car that has 150,000 miles on it, maybe take your intake off and clean the ports out first, so you're not just washing gobs of junk right into your cylinders.
It'll burn out.
Yeah, it'll burn out. May take some things along with it.
Yeah, my ATSV has 20,000 miles on it, and we had it apart for some like throttle body testing, and just kind of looked down in the intake ports, and the valves are pretty nasty already. Mm-hmm. 20,000 miles, and they're gross. And it wasn't even like all of them were. There were like certain cylinders that were way worse than others.
Yeah.
Oh really?
You know, I have a meth kit on the car, which I'm not planning on removing. Even if I could, I just leave it on because I like the idea of the cooling and the cleaning of the valves.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps me. You know, I guess meth kits we didn't talk about. Meth kits are kind of like our fifth injector. It's just an additional source of fuel, and it's amazing for DI cars because you're putting it in before the intake valves. Port injection has the benefit of the fuel washing the intake valves. DI cars don't have that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if our LNF fifth injector makes that happen, a meth kit makes it happen for other cars. You know, I have a meth kit that I bought for my BMW M6 that I haven't put on yet.
Yeah.
You know, same thing. That thing has almost 100,000 miles on it. I guarantee the intake valves are a mess.
Yeah, that might need the intake pulled off so you can blast it.
Yeah. There was a guy with an M3. He bought the car brand new. He dynoed it. It made X horsepower. He waited 1 calendar year. He was like a owner of a dyno shop. He waited 1 calendar year, dynoed it again. It made like almost 50 less horsepower at the wheels. He waited another calendar year. It lost another 50.
Holy cow.
I believe he went a third year and it lost about the same again, and then he walnut blasted it and then put it back together, and it was back to the stock horsepower.
Really?
Now,
I'm not surprised. With some of
can't-
the pictures I've seen of the valve coking,
The BMWs are known for it worse than most, I think, too. I've heard that, too.
it's possible
but
that
it's related to how your PCV system works. Because your PCV system, you have oil vapor that goes back into the intake stream. And if however the system works on whatever engine you're dealing with, if it has a lot of oil vapor, then you're going to get a lot of buildup a lot faster. The downside is on a street car, you can't just block the PCV off. And to run a catch can that's going to actually get that oil out of the airstream almost always requires some modifications to the intake manifold. That's usually where the PCV valve is located. So you have to block that, intercept it, route it through an air oil
So no way
separator.
to bolt it on and fix that.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of the catch cans that you see they'll separate the oil out that comes out of the breather lines when you're full throttle or whenever you're in boost or the PCV isn't functioning. But that's a really small percentage of
Daily
the oil
driving,
consumption
yeah.
that you get. So like the lines on the back of like the L&F valve cover, you can run an air oil separators through those, but that's not going to keep the valves and intake ports clean, because that's not where the oil that contaminates those is coming from.
Yeah, and another thing too, meth is a good transition into nitrous. Surprised none of you brought that up yet.
Yeah.
Have you had a nitrous car actually?
I've
I
had
know
a
you
few.
two have,
Yeah, I've had one nitrous kit that went between a few different vehicles.
but you just brought it with you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun only if it's a wet kit.
Yes.
I am so pro don't even put it on unless it's a wet kit.
Yeah.
Dry
because
is just an old school thing now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Like,
stupid. Like
yeah.
people will ask me like, "Hey, got my GTP, tune it for a dry shot of nitrous." And it's like, that sucks because like when the nitrous isn't spraying, it's
gonna be
50
stupid
horse rich.
Yeah.
There's 50 horsepower too much of fuel in the cylinders now.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge downgrade until the nitrous works. Nitrous does have some downsides, though. I remember my friend put it on a Civic. This is like before I worked at ZZP. Bottle pressure and bottle temperature, like, a nitrous kit on a cold day without a bottle warmer is worthless.
I ran my nitrous without one for a while because I thought it was just bullshit. And once I actually got a bottle warmer that ran off a pressure switch, I swear it like doubled the amount of power you felt.
That's exactly how I felt.
The nitrous jets are rated in the power because they control the mass flow, which is directly related to your horsepower. But that's expecting your bottle pressure to be around 1,000, like 950 to 1050, somewhere around there. So when your bottle is low, you don't get the amount of nitrous you should. The car runs rich, and it's just slow.
Yep.
It's not fun. Yeah, if you're going to do nitrous, do it right. Have your fail-safes in place. Run filters on the lines. Get a bottle heater. One that's pressure-controlled, not temperature. But other than that, man, I love nitrous.
Yep.
It's so addicting. It's so much fun.
It's weird how it was a big thing. It went away, and now it's like coming back
Now
in
it's kinda
style.
coming back.
Yeah.
I think maybe one of the reasons it's coming back is it's a lot easier to run it safely now with a lot of the standalones that are out there. And even not the standalones, you have like even the AEM fail-safe wideband. There's a very simple one that can like cut your boost or even cut ignition if you wanted to, if you get too lean within the parameters that you set. And so the things like that make it a lot easier to cover your tracks and not risk blowing your engine up.
Or you.
Yeah.
You brought up safeguards like we were just talking about the AEM fail-safe gauge. Mm-hmm. How cool of a gauge that is.
Yeah.
It's a gauge that watches your air fuel, watches your boost, and it data logs like X amount of time.
Logger.
And if you can go into it via your laptop or your computer, and you can program it to where if, let's say there's X boost and your air fuel ratio gets leaner than this, it can trigger a solenoid.
Yeah.
And you could like trigger your boost solenoid
Yeah,
or something
you could use
and
that.
cut your boost.
It gives you a ground output, so you could use that for anything. You could use it to cut your ignition relay. You could use it to cut your boost solenoid. You could use it to cut the nitrous system off. You do anything you want it to. Keep your engine from going bang.
Technology is getting pretty amazing and affordable.
Yeah,
because that gauge is very affordable.
Yeah, for the features that it provides, it's a very good bang for your buck. gauge to have.
You do your research, learn how to properly use it, and it's a neat looking gauge too. It's one of the better looking face gauges that are sold.
And you can get the black, the white. Is it just black and white they sell with those?
They always have like the different face plates, but
because you can do the bezel and the faceplate different.
Yep. And then that actually has like the larger screen, and it's like dot matrix instead of just base numbers. So it's a better looking gauge. And while we're talking about gauges, like the Aeroforce is very underrated.
Yeah, I think so too.
I've had 2 vehicles that I bought a single for, and every time I was mad that I didn't buy the dual setup.
Yeah.
So on my F-150 Dune truck, like I bought the dual setup with a wideband, and I just love that combo. 2 Aeroforces and a wideband. I can and each Aeroforce can show at least 2 things at a time, and I saw that you can program it to actually show more than 2. Mm-hmm. You can send it into Aeroforce, and they can make it to where it shows like 4 things.
Wow.
That was kind of neat. I saw it in a customer's car, and I didn't even know about it. I kind of felt stupid that I didn't know about that, but that was cool.
Yeah, Ryan showed me the ethanol content. He was looking at it in wallpaper car. I was like, well, I didn't even know you could do that. Just plugged into the OBD port. That's it.
Yep, you can tell how much ethanol you just got at the station. For you guys that can't run full E85, I mean, you can dial it in perfectly.
Yeah.
Because
if your fuel system will only support E47, it's nice to have a simple gauge to watch your ethanol content, so that when you fill up at the station, you know how much you need to add of each.
And the not worrying about your wiring job or anything like that is huge.
2-minute
install.
You put it in the hole and you plug it in.
Yeah.
Yep. And another thing I talk to people about too is let's say you have a car and it can only handle E47 for that temperature that day. That's another really cool point.
Yeah.
So if we say your car can handle E47 on a 60-degree day, and it is a 100-degree day, and you are going to the racetrack, you can handle more than E47.
Yeah.
And if you have an Aeroforce gauge, you can crank that up. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the math numbers off the top of my head, but it's very possible if your car supports E47. Yeah, 60s or potentially more. Yeah. So your actual ethanol percent your car can support, your fuel system can support, you can determine that based on that day.
Yeah.
So that's great. If it's 100 degrees, I mean, it's a pretty huge advantage to run that much more ethanol on that day.
Yeah. Anyone got any last comments, questions you want to get off your chest? It's about 5, so we're going to wrap it up here.
A good point on there. Chris asked if we had played around with E98. Yes, we do, actually. We buy it in bulk.
Yeah.
Largely because, like we were just talking about, a lot of the different vehicles here can only run certain amounts of ethanol and be happy. So
every one of our vehicles.
Every car is different.
Yeah.
Like my car, I could run it straight if I wanted to. The ATSVs, you're not going to run full E98. Mm-hmm. So buying E98 in bulk allows us to custom mix batches, and we have barrels that we pre-mix and take to the track with us. And for someone that's going to be pushing their car on the ragged edge, if you have somewhere that you can get bulk E98, luckily we have a place that, it's a couple-hour drive, but we can buy it in big bulk. Mixing E98 with 93, even if you're still making E85, is a better fuel than what you're going to get at the pump.
Yeah.
Because pump E85 is not necessarily mixed with gasoline. It can be mixed with any hydrocarbon that's in about the same flammability range.
On average.
All the way down to LNG, which is
they drop
70?
10 octane points.
Yeah.
From E98 to E85 with only 15%.
Yep.
With only a 15% change. So they're mixing it with the leftover garbage that they can't sell as gasoline.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know we used E98 in the Cobalt when we made 900.
Yeah.
E98 mixed with C16, 50-50.
Yep.
So actually, it was a little bit more C16. So it was kind of like an E47. Really good E47.
Really good E47.
Yeah.
47.
Yeah, most E85 on average, like I talked to Brenner Fuel, which supplies the E85 around here, most of it, and they said that that 15% is 70 octane liquefied natural gas.
Yeah.
What?
It would
Yeah.
have to be.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're dropping all the way from 115 to 105.
With only a
on
15% fuel.
15%.
So if you have a
terrible.
max effort car, it would be great to have E98 that you can actually mix with, like, let's say 93 octane.
Yeah.
That's already way sweeter than like pump E85.
Yes.
Or like Matt said, you can mix it with race fuel. You know,
That's what I ran in my Ion for the last half-mile events that I did. Was I mixed E98 and 110.
yep.
But since I was still running 80% ethanol and buying in bulk, E98 is still really cheap. Like using E98 and 110 still only came out to like $3.50 a gallon, which is way below what any
Yeah,
race fuel
that's
is
not
gonna
bad
cost.
for
It's
racing fuel,
Not
yeah.
terrible for a race fuel.
And more power output.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you didn't blow anything up. So
No. And that was a scary ride. And it went a little lean during the pull, but there's no way I didn't have time to look at the wideband. It made it because I had good fuel in the car.
you weren't tuning it as you went down the half mile?
Heck no!
That's what the first half is for.
I didn't have time to blink.
He closed the laptop.
Yeah.
That was pissing him off.
Told me danger to manifold. Shut up.
Well, anyways, I think that about wraps it up.
It's 5:02.
I see a couple of you guys asking about orders, some questions. We're all insanely busy here, so you'll have to just say
some of
thank
these
you to these
comments are
guys for
great.
coming up here. We're getting to them.
Yeah, every just imagine every employee here working at 100%. Like we
Yeah.
are doing our best to keep up with everybody.
Everybody's
saw,
doing at least 2 jobs.
Matt T said earlier today that since Monday he's walked 59 miles at work.
Since Monday?
Since Monday.
One of our warehouse guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just picking orders, kitting stuff, moving stuff around.
And a lot of times
I
he's
believe
driving
it.
a high-low.
Yeah, a lot of times he's on the forklift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Well, have a good weekend. Unless you guys got anything else,
I think we're
I
good
think
to go.
that's it. Let us know what you want to hear next week. So, see you guys.
Deuces.
See you guys. Good weekend.